Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody. Good day, good Tuesday morning. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com. Thank Mr. James Clary. How was the show yesterday? Awesome, I'm
It was
sure.
great.
Good old James. Thank you to him for filling in as I had the day off. You actually worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
I labored on Labor
You
Day.
did labor on Labor Day, and you got a lot done. It's nice
Yes,
and
I
quiet here,
did.
you said?
There was nobody here, and I was able to just work my tail off. How about that?
That's
Had
just,
them apples.
them apples are good.
And the
Them
reason I did that is because I'm going on vacation.
Yes, that is true. So I'll be hosting Happy Hour alone.
There you go. Yes.
We will have Happy Hour Retro Metro coming up this Friday, 4 to 6. Just swing on by as we hang out, have some drinks, have some food, and just have a really good time with one another. Talk about the issues of the day. Got some great audio, entertaining audio. Kamala Harris is out there. Did you hear her Detroit accent? She has a Detroit
No.
accent.
When
Oh
did
yes.
this happen? Yesterday?
Yes, it was yesterday in Detroit. I don't even really know what the accent is. I've tried to figure this out. I've heard it compared to Foghorn Leghorn. Do you know who that
Yes.
is? Okay, I wasn't sure if you'd know who Foghorn Leghorn was. Well, it. I don't know. Then Biden, they released him off the beach. He was out campaigning with her, and he had about 30 seconds of total incoherence. I mean, so he'll have these little bouts, obviously, because we've seen this over the past. Well, this administration, these flashes of incoherency, but he's got about 30 seconds straight of it. It's bizarre to me that they're even bringing him out. I mean, the calculation deciding to have him be part of the campaign, perhaps it's simply by comparison she looks competent. Traditionally, I mean, the guy, his election was overturned in all 50 states. Democrats just overturned it, told all the Democrat voters, yeah, you chose poorly. We know we told you that this is the guy to choose, and you listened to us. Very good, but psych. And so we're going to overthrow because he couldn't win, because he was so weakened. And then the person that the media had been openly talking about needed to drop off the ticket is the one that now they say, oh, this is going to be the greatest, most historic, successful president ever. And now they're bringing out the guy who they overthrew his election because they felt he was so unpopular that that Donald Trump was going to get elected again, and they're trotting this guy out. And it might just be a comparison's sake. Kamala Harris looks competent when standing next to him. Kamala Harris, it's a reminder, could have been this guy. Polling numbers showing she did not get a post-convention bounds. And in fact, in Tim Walz's home state of Minnesota, her lead has been cut in half after the announcement of Tim Walz as her running mate. So now Minnesota hasn't gone to a Republican maybe since the Nixon years, I believe. I mean, it's forever and a day. No one expects that state to go Republican. But that really says something when your running mate is from a state that you are losing ground in post the announcement of your running mate. I mean, this is the governor of the state. The way this is supposed to work. It's supposed to help out a little bit. Her schedule is popping her into states that should be an easy win for her. It is believed that this is because of internal polling that is showing that she is losing ground in some of these states that were supposed to be no longer in contention. She's going to be in New Hampshire and making a few other stops as well. Then there was, of course, this horrific... there's two other big items going. None of these are boding well for the Harris campaign. And you've got the horrific murder of these hostages, and then Biden saying that Netanyahu's the one who's not doing enough in order to end this. He responded to it. At the same time, you had, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, of anti-Semitic protesters yesterday in New York. You have, in a reflection of the anti-American sentiment, a couple of our service members roughed up in Turkey. I mean, we are just the lack of respect that this administration has earned for the country is palatable on any given day. And of course, they're still clinging on to this Arlington cemetery. They're trying to make it out to be a scandal. This is the way it's described. You've got Tom Cotton, and once again, he does an excellent job. This was on Sunday with Kristen Welker. NBC News had to correct one of her false statements when she falsely, trying to defend her, Kamala Harris, falsely claimed that Kamala was there for the transfer of bodies to the families that died in that disastrous withdrawal. And this is all stemming, again, from their desire to try and make a scandal out of Gold Star families wanting Trump to be part of the ceremony. So they're targeting Gold Star. Now, they're not positioning it that way, but Trump was there at the request of the Gold Star families. And they're trying to make a deal over the fact that, well, it's a felony, it's a felony, it's a felony. Well, first off, you've already got him labeled with that anyhow. Clearly did not help you. But most Americans, they see this as the families of those service members who gave their lives, these family members that are out there saying, hey, we can't even get a phone call back from anyone in this administration. This is such a dumb fight for the media to try to fight on behalf of Kamala Harris. But let them play it out. It's not working for them. This has not been a great week for the Kamala Harris campaign. Have a look at the weather coming up in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Like Bailey said, today it's going to be mostly cloudy with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 84. And on Thursday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 85.
Oh, it's also suspected that this campaign ad running for Kamala, which it talks about how she put herself through college working at McDonald's, that she actually never even worked at McDonald's. Have you see that? When there's like no
Yes.
proof of it, none. What is it with these
What do
people?
they lie about? Just easy things that can easily
That
be
I know.
debunked.
And this is to some degree, this is a created monster. We talked about this with Tim Walz. Like he make up these lies that so easily are proven untrue because you're making claims that one could verify. And in his instance, I think it's a case of when you're the governor of a state, you can just tell lies like this. You're speaking at this club and that fundraiser, and nobody questions you because, I mean, you just don't get the coverage. Even though you're the governor of a state, you may be thinking, well, don't the people in his state know? I mean, do you know where Parsons speaks and when Parsons speaks? No, we don't know this because we have lives and we're disinterested in what the governor is doing on any given day. And I think that particularly if you're on the left, that allows you wiggle room to tell lies because the media is generally speaking on your side. And when you do it long enough, you become comfortable with it. And all of a sudden, you are in the spotlight. And you have political opponents that are going to draw attention to these things on a national level. And I think this is just the result of that. Kamala Harris also, her time in California, Willie Brown's side piece, so she gets a job from there. And then, once you're in as a Democrat in certain parts of the state or statewide, you're in. And so you can pretty much just say whatever you want to say. And I think that's what happens here, whereas Republicans they've been trained. You don't misspeak on anything. Don't even say anything that could be construed as potentially misleading because you'll be pounced on. And that has created an environment in which generally when these absurd lies get told, they're told by Democrats. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a walking example of this. All of these insanely absurd stories that he tells, and he continues to tell them. And Hillary Clinton was known to do it. Almost all of these presidential candidates on the Democrat side in some capacity. I mean, Joe Biden, everything from getting arrested, marching with Nelson Mandela, to hitting a home run out of a Major League Baseball park, driving a semi truck, and getting a metal chain to beat a black guy in a parking lot called Corn Pop. I mean, it's just the array of stories that this guy tells. And, similar sort of situation, U.S. senator from a relatively small state, and he's probably been telling those stories his entire life. It's just now with the national spotlight, or as it has been for some time, you and I and other people across the country are like, what is this guy telling these stories for? And I suspect that, there's stories that anyone who's ever attended some event when he was a senator, Kiwanis Club or Lions Club, or any sort of club in which, U.S. Senator Biden's going to come speak. He's probably been telling these stories for a very long time. And, so what is Kamala Harris? She has to pretend that she's a normal person. This is what she is attempting to do. This was the whole Dorito embarrassment. Or what do people? Well, let's go into a gas station and all of us look for Doritos because that will prove how normal we are. And I think the McDonald's thing claiming, though I suppose it still could somehow turn out to be true, but so far even Snopes has it listed as their in progress. They're in progress of trying to make this determination, and I suspect it won't be declared as false because you can't really prove, something didn't happen necessarily like that, but it will probably be undetermined or something that suggests we could find absolutely no evidence of this whatsoever, but there's no way to prove that it isn't true. And so that's probably where we're going to end up with that. And is it the biggest lie in the world? No, but it's just, further evidence of who these people are. And while in Detroit, evidently this is some sort of that. I've never been to Detroit, so perhaps this is how people talk there.
You better pay for your number for sick leave. You better thank the union member for paid leave. You better thank the union member for vacation time.
All right, what is that?
I don't know. I don't like it. That's all I know.
Is she trying to sound urban? Is that what she's trying to do? It's such a weird, it almost sounds like she is a reporter on the radio 80 years ago. You know, when they talk like this, that it almost has that ring to it.
You better thank the union member.
Yeah, see?
You better thank the union member for paid leave. You better thank the union member for vacation time. Or else fuck you real good.
I mean, yeah, that's right, everyone. You better thank them. Yeah, like she's a carnival barker or something. What is it with these people with the fake accents, the pretending to be somewhat rewriting their own history? It is almost sad that some of these people, I think Hillary Clinton falls into this category, but Joe Biden probably does as well, they don't really even have a true self. They have been making up who they are for so long. I don't know that that they have a true self any longer. That every single thing about them is something that has been made up in order to cater to a certain audience. One of her biographers also said, "Yeah, I didn't know she worked at McDonald's. You've got, they're reaching out to all these people that have, written books about her and this storied career of hers, and somehow she's never mentioned the McDonald's thing." Joe Biden going full-on incoherent in Pittsburgh with Kamala Harris. Some of that audio coming up. I'm Nick Reed. If Kamala actually worked at McDonald's, there'd be employees there selling her store, easy money, and other noting on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Unless Kamala worked under the table, the Social Security office had a record of her working there. Oh, she also, yes. Good morning. This text message coming in. The best one of the Kamala claims over the weekend. I'm not sure if you saw this one. I think when she was in Atlanta, she claimed that she used to wash collard greens in the bathtub.
I did not see that one.
Yeah. This is okay. All right. Joe Biden in Pittsburgh. Now, this is not edited together. This is it's about 30 seconds of uninterrupted audio of Joe Biden at an event for Kamala Harris.
Eric Dean of the Ironworkers, Tim Driscoll of Bricklayers, Michael Hall of SEIU, Lee Saunders, Raskin, the great friend. Oh, Lou.
They just clapped.
And
No.
Jimmy Williams of the Painters Allied Trades, his name is Dad. And Dad is a really good man. Mike Coleman, a sheet metal worker.
The first part of that really is completely incoherent, but they clap, and I guess they know when they're supposed to. Other than making Kamala look like the smartest one up on the stage, it just does not seem like there is an upside to having Joe Biden come out there. Kamala is still, as are Democrats, claiming, you realize that Joe Biden is fine, that he doesn't have any sort of cognitive issues. They've just simply stated that he couldn't beat Donald Trump according to the polling numbers, which is even more appalling that they would overturn the election for that reason. It's one thing if you're like, hey, we didn't know. But they're claiming, as they have been all this time, that it has nothing to do with any cognitive decline. So Kamala Harris, who wants to be the next president of the United States, is still out there pretending as if this is perfectly normal behavior. The level of the term gaslighting has become so synonymous with this administration and with the media in campaigning for Biden and then now campaigning for Kamala Harris is just completely and totally off the charts. The polling, however, does not seem to back up this plan of theirs to continue on this pathway as Kamala Harris is retreated to defend some of these blue states. She is expected to be in New Hampshire tomorrow. What is beginning to occur is what occurred the last time she ran for the presidency, and that is, while it isn't a total complete crash and burn, and she had a number of other Democrats challenging her in the primary there, but the more people listen to her, the less they like her. So it's very, very clear. Everyone understands why they don't want her sitting down and doing interviews. Everyone knows why they do not want her talking to reporters, even if she's going to know the questions ahead of time. I mean, that CNN interview that was done, they've got to be worried about this debate. All of their eggs clearly must be in the please let Donald Trump screw this up basket, because there's no way that she comes out of a debate with Donald Trump as the victor unless Donald Trump somehow does something that is so off-putting that somehow it appears as if she came out the victor. Because, again, sitting down for that CNN debate, which absolute easy, a total gift. And she still wasn't able to manage that in any sort of beneficial way to her campaign. We're going to get a traffic update more coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll have mostly cloudy skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 84. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 85.
Fox News is reporting that the majority of Kamala's top economic advisors have zero experience in the private sector. Really? Of course they don't. I mean, of course they don't. I wish that, and maybe he will, but I think it would just be brilliant for Trump to have economic advisors that are just small business owners. That's not to say you can't have some economists on there. But when your economic background is void of any actual business experience, that's crazy to me. It's unacceptable. Well, to some people it's acceptable. It should be unacceptable to all Americans. Bill Maher, I just thought this was some good audio. It's from this past Friday. Clary was in for me yesterday, so holding it over until now. And this was, I think, yet another really great description of that sit-down interview that Kamala had, and she had to bring Tim Walz along with her, and just the visuals of it, the message that it sent, and Bill Maher's inference from all of it.
There, it looked like when your dad goes with the young woman to help buy a car, when dad comes along. I mean, why? She hadn't done an interview in so long. Or maybe that's the strategy. They look like a married couple. They look like every interracial couple in every commercial.
They messed it up because they didn't do the optics right, because she looked like she was only 2 feet tall and he was up front looking like Frosty the Snowman. So, but I see what they were going for.
It's never good. It's one thing to be the subject of aggravation, annoyance, scorn, criticism, but when people are mocking you and laughing at you, that's never a good sign. Vice President Kamala Harris' campaign going on the defense as former President Donald Trump gained steam in blue states after Harris's failure to achieve a post-convention bump, which most modern campaigns take for granted. The campaign is sending Harris and her top surrogates, ticket mate Walz, of course, her husband Imhoff, to the blue states after a weekend of planned swing state visits. On Wednesday, Harris will reportedly visit New Hampshire, where she enjoyed only a 4-point advantage, according to an Emerson College WHDH survey before the convention, for a campaign event yet to be announced. Walz will be in his home state of Minnesota, where Trump has cut Harris's lead from 10 to only 5 points since Walz joined the ticket, according to 2 KTSP Survey USA polls. Imhoff will reportedly cross the Potomac River for a fundraising trip in Virginia, another state where Trump has pulled unexpectedly strong in the 2024 cycle. An occasional detour during the usual long campaign season is not irregular. However, these trips are noteworthy for a nascent campaign only cobbled together after President Biden's implosion that must make every day count. With barely 2 months before the election, the blue state visits follow a weekend of planned swing state visits, and before that, a multi-day joint Harris-Walz romp through Georgia that left many pundits scratching their head. The unconventional scheduling is on the heels of a terrible week highlighted by the campaign's trashing of 13 Gold Star families, an attack that blew up spectacularly in the campaign's face, though they're not letting go of that. In another sign that the campaign is flailing, it's reportedly planning to send Biden to the campaign trail, which you heard some of that audio earlier. An ABC News Ipsos poll revealed Sunday that Harris received no overall bounce in support after formally accepting her party's nomination at the Democratic National Convention. So what her campaign is having to worry about here it's an absolute must for her to maintain the support that she already has, because she can't afford to lose any of it. The problem she has is she's not very likable. She does not do well. We've seen what little debating she did, Tulsi Gabbard, during the 2020 primary cycle, just eviscerated her. She is incapable of even a sit-down interview coming off as normal. And so while there's some time before the election, it's a treading water situation for Kamala. Now, I mentioned this story earlier, and Minnesota is not a state that is expected to go to Donald Trump, but you would think that picking its governor would help you some as your running mate. However, the opposite has occurred. Before Biden dropped out of the presidential race, Trump was gaining ground in a number of blue states. Maine, Virginia, New Hampshire, even Minnesota were in or approaching toss-up territory. When Kamala replaced Biden on the top of the ticket, the polls told us that these states were no longer in reach for Trump. However, that may be changing. Recent polling shows that Virginia may still be in play, and Kamala is headed to New Hampshire this week, which may be a sign that her campaign is worried about that state as well. Now we're starting to see numbers that suggest that her selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz may be hurting her in his home state. Kamala Harris's bet on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz actually losing ground for her in that state. That is the takeaway from new polling of 635 likely voters from Minnesota's KSTP, which found that the Democratic presidential nominee's advantage over Donald Trump has been cut in half since she picked Walz as her running mate last month and showcased the ticket at the Democratic National Convention. Harris now leads Trump 48-43, a significant decline for her from the previous survey that showed her up 50-40. The opposite of a post-convention bump that normally would have been expected. This is particularly remarkable given that this was a poll that included more Democrat than Republican respondents, with Dems making up 40% of the sample, Republicans only 35%, and independent the remainder. The hilarious part is that according to the poll data, Walz is the one who's likely causing her decline in the state. They write only 52% of Minnesota voters see him as an excellent or a good choice, 12% saying a fair selection, and 34% saying he's a poor pick, according to the New York Post. Walz is underwater with men, with 49% approving of his selection and 50% opposing it. About 40% of male respondents call him a poor choice of the running mate. Well, this has been explained to us. It's because Republican men are threatened by his masculinity. This is one of the talking points for the failure to convert over some of those individuals. Voters under the age of 35, a key demographic Harris needs in November, also are not enthusiastic. 49% calling Walz an excellent or good pick. The other 51% regarded him as unfavorable. Those voters make up 25% of the anticipated November electorate. Walz is also 1 percentage point underwater with parents, with 48% regarding him favorably, 49% panning the pick. Among people with children, 35% say he was a poor selection. A dramatic urban-rural divide also appears on this question. 38% of rural residents approving of the pick compared to 59% of those in the suburbs and 61% in urban areas, while 59% of Twin City residents rate the selection as excellent or good. Only 48% of those in northeast Minnesota, 46% of those in western Minnesota, and 35% of those in southwestern Minnesota make that claim. Other recent polling has shown that picking Walz was a major mistake. According to a recent WIC Insights poll, Kamala would likely be comfortably ahead in Pennsylvania, a must-win state for her had she not skipped over Governor Shapiro as her running mate, we all know why that was. That all of these problems are caused by an effort to win over the anti-Semitic wing of the Democrat Party. This was a strategic decision that was made, and that as a Democrat needing that anti-Semitic vote, particularly in certain parts of the country where there are some must-win states. She deliberately did not pick the individual, that would be Governor Shapiro, that was the obvious. Popular in his state, relatively younger guy. He doesn't look like the doofus that Waltz looks like. We don't know that he has lied about his background to the extent that Waltz has, but during the run-up to the selection when he was considered to be one of the potential, or he was a finalist, if you will, for that pick, we weren't learning of any lies he told about his military service or about fertility or about anything else that Waltz has lied about. And so just one reason only, anti-Semitism. And most Americans would argue that's not a good look for the Democrat Party in 2024. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, and that includes tires as well. So often, you got to make a separate trip to the tire store, particularly when it comes to the purchasing of tires. But A1 Custom Car Care, in line with everything else they do, you can purchase tires as well as have all of your tire work done all in one location. So you don't have to make two separate trips. You can make the one, you're getting the routine maintenance done, maybe a check engine light, maybe you're getting an oil change, whatever it may be, routine maintenance or otherwise, you can get that tire update as well. A1 Custom Car Care. KSGF.com coming up this week. Is this active now? It is active now? Okay.
Yep.
So right now, when did this?
It dropped yesterday.
Oh, we usually do these on Fridays, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, we're just promoting the fact that we're doing it on Friday.
Oh, but that's what it says this week we have half. No, that's why I was asking if it's live now. Like, can people do this now? Because that's the way it reads. It says this week we have half price $50 certificates to Springfield's Little Theater's Wizard of Oz for only $25.
No, but it's dropping this Friday at 10 a.m.
Oh, there it does say it at the end. Okay. I didn't read the last three words. Friday at 10 a.m. So make a little reminder for yourself if you need to. That's coming up this Friday at 10 a.m. You can get yourself for only $25, $50 gift certificates to see Wizard of Oz at Springfield Little Theater. Someone had texted in that the Reagan movie is great. I'm hearing good things about it.
Yeah, my mom and my dad went and watched it.
Oh, they did? What'd they say?
They said that it was very sad, but it was great. It's like, okay.
I mean, it's supposed to be good.
Yeah, they said it was really good.
Yeah. Oftentimes, those movies, I think that people who are not left wing get a little bit nervous because of the way that the political persuasion of folks that are traditionally part of Hollywood fall and the impact it can have. But that's not the case here. And it's something that Dennis Quaid evidently is just a very, very big fan of. You know, when he was on the show, I swear he talked about this. Now, he was on the show a long time ago.
I am kicking myself every single time we talk about Dennis Quaid. I get so mad. I did not skip class to meet him when he was here at the station.
Yeah,
And
well,
I will forever be mad at myself for that.
well, he came by to he did come by here to meet with some of the folks on our other stations, but we were out at Bricks, Belgian Waffle and Pancake House at that time, and he stopped by and visited because he and that band of his, I think they were performing in Branson, and it's a really funny story. I didn't promote it ahead of time that he was going to be on because sometimes you just never know, right?
Right.
Like, well, something comes up or you don't know. So I didn't tell anyone, and I'm on air, and he's like in the middle. He just walks and sits down, and he's like, "I want some pancakes. Somebody bring me pancakes." And so I went to a break, and then we came back and we just talked about a number of different things that he was doing. And there was a listener who, after he had left, and he was so great to go around and meet with anyone that wanted to meet with him, just very gracious. And a listener came up. He said, I thought that was a guy just pretending to be Dennis Quaid. I was like 10 minutes into listening to him before I realized that was actually him. I said, yeah, it was him. He thought it was just a guy that kind of looked like him, and because of the way he sat down and everything without being introduced. And I thought that was really funny. But I swear he was talking about a Reagan project that he was hoping to be working on at some point. And that could be just in my head. I don't know if we have archives that far back or not.
It's been like 6 or 7 years at this point.
Yeah, I mean it was some time ago. We had some great guests down there. Kenny Rogers, he was one of my favorites. I really enjoyed having him on. Dennis Quaid, and I don't know who else. Probably some others. Those are the two that I can think of off the top of my head. Coming up, there was a real funny posting. Mark Cuban, he asked his followers on X, whose persona and character would you like to see young children grow up to have? And the choices were Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Now, Cuban is somebody that, while once upon a time he praised Trump, even in the context of running for president, but he doesn't like him now. And the response he got was probably not what he was hoping for. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Before this Mark Cuban posting, the Pyramid Roofing Company talk a text line. I have a question I haven't heard discussed anywhere. God forbid she wins. How will she, Kamala, as a sitting VP certify her own win with Congress? She just would. That is, that would be her role, and I don't believe that there's anything that makes that out to be any sort of constitutional conflict. I mean, surely that's had to have happened in the past. Now, what will be a lot of fun is if she doesn't win, and then she has to certify Trump. that will, oh boy, she will not like that in the least. Mark Cuban, owner of NBA Dallas Mavericks, demonstrated that he's pretty out of touch because he posted on X a question that he clearly hosted believing he was going to get a response other than he got. It was a two-way poll, and he said, whose persona and character would you like to see young children grow up to have? He clearly thought that this would be overwhelmingly Kamala. He was making a point. Didn't work out that way. Wasn't even close. When the poll ended, likely after Cuban was over being humiliated, reading from redstate.com, Trump stood at 68.9%, with Harris at just 31.1%. 804,173 votes were cast. Now, I mean, it's a silly poll. And I don't think that the walkaway, and Red State makes this point to some degree, it isn't the poll results itself. It's that, Mark Cuban is yet another one of these people just so out of touch with what the average person is going through in this country. And I imagine that he thought this would be overwhelming because everyone in his circle of influence hates Donald Trump. Everyone in his little world thinks Donald Trump is the most deplorable, awful human being ever. And he, this is a human thing. You tend to, unless you're very proactive otherwise, one tends to believe that the culture, the beliefs, the thoughts within their circle are a representation of people overall. I've long believed this is why Democrats always threaten to leave the country if they don't win an election, because they think that there's no way the person that they're threatening to leave the country over is ever going to win, because everyone they know hates that person. George Bush was a perfect example of this. This is when we really began to hear Democrats talk about, I'll leave the country if this person gets elected president. And famously, none of them actually did leave the country. None of them that are high profile and made a deal out of it anyhow. And we've heard these threats made virtually every time a Republican is elected president. And I think it's a reflection of the fact that not that they really genuinely plan on leaving. Of course they don't. And they certainly have the means to. But their world is so closed off from what the average American goes through. All they come into contact with on a daily basis are people who just can't believe that anyone would vote for Donald Trump or George Bush. And so it's somewhat of a safe bet, and it's to illustrate, of course, just the severity of somebody like then Bush, or just any, again, of the string of Republicans who have won, some successfully, some unsuccessfully. It is to demonstrate, as the left often does, how severe a scenario is. That it's so severe that they would just have to leave the country, but they don't believe that that's going to be the outcome because they lived in this closed-off little world. So Mark Cuban posting this is because he clearly felt that overwhelmingly people would say, well, I'd much rather my children grow up to be like Kamala Harris than Donald Trump. People are people. They all have character flaws. But I think most people who would rather see their children grow up with the sort of character Donald Trump has isn't because he is perfect moral character, but because of the way that he's raised his family and the way that he has become a successful person in his own right, not using someone else's coattails. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs, perhaps at the same time. That can be a little bit tricky. You know, Friday she joined us and explained to us what it means whenever there is a home for sale and it looks like it's all but said and done, but actually it isn't. And I think it's like, with contingencies, and it's contingent upon, generally speaking, the person making the offer selling their home. And that does not mean that it's something that you just have to sit around and wait to see if it gets back on the market. I'd go back and listen to the podcast if you want more information on that. But that's part of what she does. She makes sure that those of us here in the area understand a lot of this stuff that can be mysterious to us at times, but also specifically when it comes to selling your home, the things that you need to do, the things that you need not to worry about. Don't start spending money, quote, fixing up your home in order to get it on the market without first visiting with her first. That's Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You can find her at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. U.S. President Joe Biden told reporters yesterday, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not doing enough to reach a deal with Hamas on the release of hostages. Biden answered questions from reporters upon his return to the White House after nearly 2 weeks of vacation, first in Santa Barbara, California, then in Delaware. He was asked by reporters in the wake of the cold-blooded murder of 6 hostages by Hamas last week whether the Israeli prime minister is doing enough for the deal, to which Biden said no. What more can he do? How many times can the Israelis say, okay, here's a deal, let's do this, only for Hamas to say no? Netanyahu was asked about this, and I want to play his response coming up because it's as straightforward as you can possibly be, but it's insane that the world acts as if the burden is somehow to be on the Israelis when they are the ones that time and time and time again have come forth with a deal. And Netanyahu goes through this. He lists the dates and the response from our government at the time of each of these deals were put forth, praising them, noting this is on Hamas now, yet you still get some, in particular Joe Biden, that's claiming Netanyahu's the one who's not doing enough. You know, the Israeli government, they need to be much more like Hamas. Hamas is being so accommodating, executing people, sending horrific videos to their family members. I mean, you can see why this administration is siding with Hamas in this. Is it any wonder when that position that is taken by Joe Biden is what is fueling so much of the anti-Semitism? Some of the footage of these anti-Semitic protesters in New York, it looks like we are some Middle Eastern country with the visuals of the flags and the smoke grenades and the faces covered up. If you were to take that footage versus footage of these sorts of protests in the Middle East and ask which is which, you might have a difficult time determining which occurred in the United States and which occurred in the Middle East. I don't think people have a full appreciation for what it is going to mean for Jewish citizens in this country if Kamala Harris gets elected president. And we're still not. The media is not giving the full picture of much of what these Jewish students, particularly on college campuses, are going through. It is not going to get any better if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz end up in the White House. This is going to be an increasingly dangerous country for Jewish people to be in. I want to play Biden's audio coming up here in just a couple of moments. The Netanyahu's audio coming up here in response to Biden claiming that Netanyahu is the one who's not being accommodating enough when it comes to dealing with Hamas. Springfield's Talk 104.1, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 84. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 85. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to criticism yesterday from Joe Biden by saying the pressure Israel in the wake of Hamas's murder of 6 hostages will only encourage Hamas to kill more hostages. They're pressuring Israel, rather. In other words, he's spelled out, I'm going to play the audio here in a moment, that Joe Biden is encouraging more hostages to be killed through his actions, through his words. Netanyahu, speaking at a press briefing, delivered a presentation almost entirely in Hebrew. He began by noting that Israel is in an existential threat or struggle for survival against a brutal enemy. He apologized, as he's done before, to the families of the 6 murdered hostages, including American-Israeli Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who were killed as Israeli soldiers neared the location underground where they were being held. Quote, "We were close, but we did not succeed." The Prime Minister then showed maps of a screen to explain the strategic importance of that particular corridor, which runs along the Gaza-Egyptian border. Before Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, he noted, Israel controlled the border. After the disengagement, when Israel no longer controlled that border, Hamas was able to smuggle in weapons that it used to attack Israel. It was necessary, he noted, to hold the corridor to prevent Hamas from rearming. But because of international pressure, that portion of the land was surrendered. Netanyahu yesterday, part of this is directly in response to President Biden's assertion that Netanyahu is the one who's not doing enough.
I was asked whether I'm not doing enough. to the release of hostages. Well, I want to set the record straight. On April 27th, Secretary of State Blinken said that Israel made an extraordinarily generous offer for a hostage deal. On May 31st, Israel agreed to a U.S.-backed proposal. Hamas refused. On August 16th, Israel agreed to what the United States defined as a final bridging proposal. Hamas refused again. On August 19th, Secretary Blinken said, Israel accepted the U.S. proposal. Now Hamas must do the same. On August 28th, that's 5 days ago, Deputy CIA Director said that Israel shows seriousness in the negotiations. Now Hamas must show the same seriousness. I want to ask you something. What has changed in the last 5 days? What has changed? One thing. These murderers executed 6 of our hostages. They shot them in the back of the head. That's what's changed. And now after this, we're asked to show seriousness? We're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas? It says, kill more hostages, murder more hostages, you'll get more concessions. The pressure internationally must be directed at these killers, at Hamas, not at Israel. We say yes, they say no all the time, but they also murdered these people. And now we need maximum pressure on Hamas. I don't believe that either President Biden or anyone serious about achieving peace and achieving the release would seriously ask Israel to make these concessions. We've already made them. Hamas has to make the concession.
I can't even begin to fathom the frustration of trying to fight off this horrific ongoing terrorism and then have to spend time fighting back against what is supposed to be your ally, acting as the propaganda wing for Hamas. Because that is exactly what is occurring here. The trouble, of course, in addition to all of this, is we don't know how much of this Biden even recognizes or understands is occurring. We have no idea. Does he understand that many of these peace deals that the Israelis have agreed to were peace deals put forth by, or ceasefires, put forth by the United States of America? It isn't as if Netanyahu is coming up with a number of these ceasefire agreements that the United States is arguing is one-sided or are non-starters. Many of these ceasefire deals are written by this administration. And so Netanyahu agrees to it, only then to have Joe Biden out there saying that Netanyahu's the one who's not doing enough. What more can he do? These are the peace negotiations, these ceasefire deals that are being put out by the United States and said, okay, let's come to the table. And Israel says, all right, we sign off on this. Let's do it. To then have Joe Biden go out and say Netanyahu isn't doing enough? That is exactly what Hamas needs. That is exactly what Hamas wants. And what Netanyahu is noting here, and it's the truth, that he is all but guaranteeing more of these hostages will be murdered. Because every time they do it, they get a gift from Joe Biden, and that is essentially an endorsement from the United States that they're the ones who are acting reasonable, while Benjamin Netanyahu is the one who's the problem here. This is what they want. And you are all but guaranteeing that it is worth their while, that they will do more of it. You see, this is why, for the longest time, we had this policy of not negotiating with terrorists. Because when you do, in the capacity that this administration is, you are making the murdering of innocent people valuable. You are telling Hamas that if you want the President of the United States to come out and denounce your enemy, kill more hostages. And the implications of this anyhow, you've got this video coming out of Turkey yesterday. Members of the socialist and national group Turkish Youth Union attacking American soldiers on the streets in protest against Israel's action in Gaza and decades-long U.S. imperialism. So you've got Biden out there trashing on Netanyahu, helping fan the flames against the Jewish people of Israel. And then even in countries like Turkey, of course, we see it with the anti-Semitic protesters here in the United States, but you've got, as a result of this environment and this atmosphere that Joe Biden is leading against Israel, these responses in which, in this particular case, you have U.S. Or members of the U.S. military that were being attacked in response to all of this. 15 assailants were arrested after the assault. In a statement, the governor's office said members of the Turkey Youth Union, a youth branch of the nationalist opposition Vatan Party, physically attacked 2 U.S. soldiers dressed in civilian clothes in the Konak district. In addition, it added that 5 U.S. soldiers joined in after seeing the incident, and the police intervened. All 15 attackers have been detained, and an investigation was launched into the matter. The U.S. Embassy to Turkey confirmed the attack and said the U.S. soldiers were now safe. Quote, "We can confirm reports that U.S. service members embarked aboard the USS Wasp, where the victims of an assault in Izmir today, and are now safe," it said on social media platform X. The U.S. Embassy issued a statement as well, saying we can confirm reports that U.S. service members embarked aboard the USS Wasp, where the victims of the assault took place. They're safe. We thank Turkish authorities for the rapid response and ongoing investigation. I don't even know, and it's very hard to determine whether or not Biden is being allowed to make comments on the situation in Gaza as part of, is this part of a plan? Because he's contradicting his own State Department as Netanyahu laid out. And he's contradicting the reality of the fact that it is the Israelis who have agreed to these ceasefires. And part of the problem that we have is that this guy is president of the United States, but he's not all there cognitively. And despite the Democrats' denial about this, and it was really, there was this brief period of time before they successfully overturned the election in which they all began acknowledging that he had cognitive issues. Remember that little period of time? Even world leaders, oh yeah, we've known it for 2 years. You had Chuck Todd saying, oh, yeah, we've known this. People within the White House have been saying for a couple years now the problem exists. Once they finished him off, though, they've gone back to pretending as if he has no cognitive issues. Oh, no, it was just all about electability. This isn't the CEO of some little rinky-dink organization that is largely irrelevant to what happens in our lives. He's the President of the United States of America. And when he makes statements that reverberate through the entire world, when he makes declarations putting us on the wrong side of terrorism, when he is using the talking points of the terrorists, we don't know if it's because he's senile or if this is some deliberate plan to sabotage peace. None of it, however, is a positive for good. It is a positive for evil, unfortunately. And again, regardless of his senility coming into play here, the people who are ultimately allowing this to continue and allowing Hamas to benefit from executing hostages will be many of the same people that will populate a Harris administration should she get elected president of the United States. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Just the News reporting, Jewish Columbia U students chased, spat on, pinned against walls, according to a report. The school's anti-Semitic task force released a damning 91-page report detailing abuse suffered by Jewish students. Columbia University's Jewish student population faced extreme harassment in the wake of Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. A Friday report by a faculty-led anti-Semitism task force revealed the school became a cesspool of anti-Semitism after the deadly attacks, the New York Post reported. They already were. This wasn't some newfound anti-Semitism. This is a belief that when there is any sort of conflict, if there are white people involved and there are non-white people involved, the people who are the white people are the bad guys. This is called the oppression matrix. This isn't anything new. This is DEI, CRT indoctrination. This is the results. When you declare an entire grouping of people as being bad because of their race, this is the result. This is what they've been trained to believe. It's just after October 7th, it's sort of activated, if you will. Jewish students at the Ivy League school were shoved, pushed to the ground, berated for showing support for Zionist causes, and had to watch Israeli flags being burned. They recounted seeing drawings of swastikas in their dorms, students yelling pro-Hamas chants, and being denied access to public spaces and opportunities simply because they were Jewish or Israeli, the report found. The task force heard testimony from nearly 500 Columbia students and found visibly observant Jews had been pinned against the wall, had their jewelry ripped off while going to and coming from the synagogue. Other reports of being spat on or called ethnic slurs. This is on university campuses. This specifically Columbia. But this is no different than what university campuses run by the left all over this country have been subjecting Jewish citizens to. The way that this has been covered and presented, unfortunately, doesn't give the full sense of what is going on. So many of us, we would learn in history class in middle school or junior high or high school about the horrors of average citizens in Germany just pretending as if nothing was occurring that was detrimental to the Jewish people. That wasn't my problem. And we said to ourselves, how could civilized people just watch the lead up to what would become the Holocaust? You know, it didn't just happen overnight. Germany was not a place where everything was wonderful, hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden, with absolutely no buildup, no propaganda, no harassment whatsoever, Jewish people and Jewish citizens of Germany went from everything's fine to, things are really, really, really wrong. There was a buildup, harassment, threats, verbally accosting Jewish people. There was this sort of buildup that is occurring in the United States today. And when you have a presidential candidate that skipped, who chose a vice presidential candidate in order to cater to these people, this is not good news for this country. We're going to get a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 84. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 85. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, one thing that sets the Pyramid team aside from the rest is the quality of products that they use. Not only do they use name brand, high quality shingles, but they also use Ice and Water Shield as well. Now, Ice and Water Shield is a stick-down product that is designed to prevent water in the most common areas that leak on your roof. Now, most roofing companies, they don't use Ice and Water Shield, and if they do, they only place it in the valleys. But the Pyramid team, they like to go above and beyond, and they place it not only in the valleys, but also on the eaves and around the vents, which are also common areas that leak. And they do that to really give your roof that extra layer of protection. So whether you need a simple roof repair, maybe you need a whole new roof, or you just want a free roof inspection to check the health of your roof, go ahead and give Josh and his team a call today. Now, you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Every so often, the Democrats choose a hill to fight on that is such a foolish hill, and one of them is the refusal to let this Arlington Cemetery thing go. Now, of course, the media is doing what they can in order to give a big assist to the Harris campaign here by trying to, change the narrative of Gold Star families who asked Trump to be there. Change it from that to Donald Trump is some horrifically shallow and macabre individual that used the deaths of these men and women in order to campaign on. Now, of course, the problem that they're having with this is the fact that the Gold Star families are 100% behind Trump on this. They invited Trump, and at the same time, if there is a political component to this, it's only because the current administration refuses to give these people the time of day. What makes something political? Arguably, it's when you have opposing sides of an issue. And the fact that this administration, you got Joe Biden out there on vacation. Clearly, they think that he is capable of doing campaign rallies, as incoherent as he may be. They have no trouble with him doing that. Kamala Harris was just a few miles down the road, as Tom Cotton pointed out with Kristen Welker on NBC yesterday. The real problem here for the Democrats is the fact that this administration continues to ignore these people. NBC had to issue a correction because of disinformation put out by Kristen Welker, falsely claiming that Harris was with Joe Biden during the reception of those 13 individuals coming home. This is the exchange from Sunday with Cotton and Welker.
Line, though, I guess, Senator, is it ever appropriate to make campaign content at military grave sites?
He didn't take campaign photos there. These families, Gold Star families, whose children died because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's incompetence, invited him to the cemetery. And they asked him to take those photos because, as they told me yesterday, when I spoke to Kelly Barnett and Darren Hoover, the parents of Taylor Hoover, who has Arkansas ties, they don't get to go to the beach on Labor Day. They don't get to have barbecues. This is their one chance to have a memory of their children, to commemorate their service and to honor their sacrifice. They wanted President Trump there. They wanted to take those photos. You know who the families also invited? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Where were they? Joe Biden was sitting at a beach. Kamala Harris was sitting at her mansion in Washington, D.C. She was 4 miles away. 10 minutes. She could have gone to the cemetery and honored the sacrifice of those young men and women. But she hasn't. She never has spoken to them or taken a meeting with them.
Well, they did meet with them during the dignified training.
Because of
they were with them at the dignified training.
Her and Joe Biden's incompetence that those 13 Americans were killed in Afghanistan.
Now, the misstatement that was put out there is that she was also there when they came home, and of course that was not true. NBC has referred to it as suggesting that Harris was there. It wasn't a suggestion. She flat out claimed. And this was done, she's trying everything she can to protect Kamala Harris. You notice how, and it's obvious, what's outrageous to them isn't that the President of the United States looked at his watch constantly during that reception. It's not that they refuse to even return the phone calls of these parents. It's that Donald Trump may benefit from this somehow. That is their number one concern. That's what has them all tied up in knots. And instead of just letting this go, they cannot help themselves. Now you've got folks from the Harris campaign, or a Harris aide. Now, I'm not sure if this is a campaign aide or an aide to her as vice president of the United States, that are essentially calling these Gold Star family members liars. So now this is where they are. They're now attacking the Gold Star family members. The point of contention here is the Harris campaign, of course, it's not Harris herself because she doesn't take any sort of position on anything. She has these aides come out and do her talking for her, that she was never asked, that she was never invited, that the Gold Star family members who say that that Biden and Harris were asked to attend, that never happened. They're just all a bunch of liars. Like a lot of things, it could be somewhere in between. I mean, they've been openly calling for, perhaps they call the White House and say, listen, we're going to be doing this. We want to make sure that the president and vice president understand that we would like for them to be there. But when Harris refuses to meet with or speak with any of these people, Joe Biden refuses to meet with or speak with any of these Gold Star family members, then they can just deny that they were ever invited. We weren't invited. We've never even talked to them. Well, yeah, because you won't answer their calls. There are some people who don't understand why they won't at least meet with them. Why they will not pick up a phone call and have a phone conversation and end all of this. And I can tell you exactly why. Because they fear desperately the family members, if they were to get a meeting, be it over the phone or in person, that they would figure out a way to record the conversation. This is particularly problematic if they do it over the phone because you could so easily record a conversation. And they do not want that sort of confrontation to be out there. They do not want Joe Biden to be on the receiving end of some of these family members telling him or her what they really think about either of them. In other words, avoiding all accountability, which is commonplace with this administration. Nothing is ever their fault. Nothing is ever their responsibility, up to and including the disaster called Afghanistan, although Kamala Harris has bragged in the past about being the last one in the room. She really wanted people to see her as that trusted advisor, that she's so significant and so important that she was the last one in the room. And she declares that still she's happy with the way things have turned out. Given that approach that they've taken, it is so obvious and so clear that they desperately fear a conversation that is recorded between a father or a mother and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden trying to talk their way out of it. They're not going to take responsibility for it. That's the last thing they want to do because they can't take responsibility for anything. And I imagine that largely that's what the family would like. Any of these families would like just a little bit of admission. Or would like an I'm sorry. We screwed this thing up. This is not how it was supposed to turn out. But that conflicts with their official line that it was the single greatest airlift ever in the history of mankind, and everyone was on board with it, and everyone thought it was just the wonderful demonstration of what Americans can do. And if you dare question it, then how dare you question people who serve this country? Tulsi Gabbard was on with CNN, Dana Bash, similar sort of exchange. Well, it's a federal law. It's federal law. He's violating a federal law. Trump had cameras there. It's violating a federal law. This is not the winning side of the argument. And the fact that they continue to keep this thing alive is only beneficial for Donald Trump. Because look who's on what side. Military family members are with Donald Trump. The only reason that this is becoming as political as it is because of the Biden-Harris administration making it this way. You know, there was I don't know if you'd call it legendary story, but there was, I believe it was Clinton, and there was a photo of him propping up a flag that had fallen over on the headstone of someone. I forget if this was in Arlington Cemetery or this was over in Europe somewhere. But it would get reported, it would turn out that he had that knocked over so he could go over for the photo op. A photo of him stoically resetting that flag. That sort of thing is perfectly presidential-y. The question that I would ask every one of these individuals that is trying to turn this into something that can be harmful to Donald Trump is, do you not think the families deserve their request to be granted? They requested him to be there. They wanted to have the visual memories, not only for themselves, but for family members that could not be part of it. Are you saying that they don't deserve that, given what they've gone through? That's the question I'd throw right back at them. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Kansas Territory Brewing Company making its way into the Springfield market already this season. You could purchase some of their fine beers at Hammond's Field. Probably going to see billboards before too long popping up. Maybe you see it in some of your favorite stores where you go to purchase your beer or any other sort of alcohol. And just heads up to keep an eye out for it. I've had the Bradford Light and the Pineapple Life Coach. Both delicious. The Bradford Light, probably more of your what I call go-to beer, whereas the Pineapple Life Coach, it's not overly sweet. I'm not big into just overly sweet beers. I go kind of through these phases, but real sweet stuff isn't ever anything that I really like. That Pineapple Life Coach is a really good balance of it, and it's not too hoppy also. A lot of times I notice that the pineapple-flavored beers have a lot of hops to it, which can be a turnoff for some people, but the Pineapple Life Coach is just a great balance. So keep your eyes out. You could also visit them online, KansasTerritoryBrewingCo.com. So NBC's Kristen Welker, quote, incorrectly implied that Vice President Kamala Harris was in attendance at the dignified transfer of U.S. troops killed during the Afghanistan withdrawal. They, according to Welker, quote, did meet them during the dignified transfer. They were with them at the dignified transfer. This, again, is the media trying to cover for the Harris campaign. NBC posted a correction on the show's X account after the show, quote, on our broadcast this morning, we incorrectly implied that both President Biden and Vice President Harris attended the dignified transfer of 13 American service members killed during the Afghanistan withdrawal. Biden was in attendance, but Harris was not. Of course, that was the event in which Biden was photographed repeatedly checking his watch during the proceedings. And what a number of people have pointed out, even in this correction the term implied. And they're noting this isn't implying. She flat out falsely claimed that Harris was there for the transfer when she was not. That's not implying. It's not suggesting. It is flat out claiming that she was there. Whenever misinformation is put out or disinformation is put out, particularly by the media in an effort to protect the Democrats, I'm always struck by the question, did they really believe that when they said, I mean, did she really believe that? In her mind, is that what occurred? Because it's understandable. People have false memories all the time. Remembering that event, there may have just been an assumption made that she was there because she was vice president and the final person in the room with Joe Biden when they made the decision to carry out this disaster. Or is it just instinct to defend? And it may be a combination of the two things. But it demonstrates the mindset. This is not the mindset of someone who is objectively evaluating what is going on, just that instinct to jump to her defense and to jump to Joe Biden's defense. And, well, she was here for this. Even if she were, so what? But this is the go-to instinct of the media today. And the apologies that get put out there are never on the same level as the disinformation. There's no sense of shame or embarrassment. It's not even her that puts the statement out. Odds are it'll not be addressed on air, but it gets put out in a tweet. So they can technically say, well, we apologized. But we know what the goal was, and that was to defend Kamala Harris. Instinctually defend Kamala Harris. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. There's a bit of an interesting development out in California regarding no tax on tips. And there was a proposed amendment last week in California, as you know, run by Democrats, that aim to implement a no tax on tips policy following Harris ripping off Donald Trump's proposal. Republican Senator Rosalisi Ochabo introduced the amendment on Thursday to exempt tips for service workers from state income tax, allowing workers to take home more earnings. All 9 Republican state senators supported the measure, but Democratic lawmakers, except the Senate pro tem and the State Senator Nancy Skinner, who abstained, blocked the amendment from even being considered. Ochabo said it is deeply disappointing that the legislature chose not to consider a proposal that could have provided much-needed relief to California workers, with Californians facing one of the highest cost of living in the nation. Our service and hospitality industry employees are particularly burdened by a tax system that leaves them struggling to make ends meet. They deserve better, and today's decision is a missed opportunity to support those who need it most. Of course, in early August, Harris announced her support for the no tax on tips policy, promising to continue fighting for working families of America, including raising the minimum wage, eliminating taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. However, of course, former President Donald Trump called out Harris for adopting the policy. It is interesting to see Democrats block this in California because it gives you a sense of where Democrats really are when it comes to this issue, and it further demonstrates what many people see as a cynical ploy, and that is Kamala Harris just saying whatever it is that she thinks that she has to say in order to get elected. And it's clear that at some point they did some internal polling or they recognized what could be a very powerful issue for Donald Trump, and so they tried to cut it off at the pass. Instead of coming out against it like apparently the rest of her party, or at least in California, coming out immediately and saying, oh, no, we're going to do that as well, leaving Trump to only accuse her of being a copycat, but at least she's a copycat on the side of the average worker. But then her own political party in her homeland of California, Democrats block that same sort of relief. Now, this would have been a great opportunity for Kamala Harris to demonstrate leadership. If Kamala Harris really, truly believed that the hard-working Americans in the service industry need this relief, where was she to pick up the phone and use her clout to pressure the Democrats out in California to pass this amendment? I think it's pretty telling that not only did the Democrats block it from even being given a shot, but that Kamala Harris has been completely absent, given that this is one of her very economic policies. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. iwantagreathomeloan.com. All of your home loan needs, that is where it begins. That is the first step before you begin looking at those homes. Downsizing, upsizing, sideways sizing, however you're doing it, for whatever reason you're doing it. Maybe you want to be out of the city and the country. Think, well, we'll look first. And then if we find something we like, then we'll go through that process. The problem is that odds are someone else has already gone through that process. And so they are, in turn, able to say, oh, look, I'm good for it. Got my pre-approval letter here. And then it's a done deal, unless something else falls through. And then you are left in the weeds and behind the curve, especially if it's on a Sunday, over the weekend when a lot of open houses occur. And like I said, that other person, even if they come in after you and they've got that pre-approval letter, that is going to put them to the front of the line. So make sure that you do that. It's an easy process. It's all set up at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers. Some of these things are incidental, but they are kind of funny. He's the Democrat governor of Wisconsin. The rationalization that Democrats use in order to justify the anti-Semitic pick for the vice presidency of Tim Walz is to say, listen, she's got to win states like Michigan and Wisconsin and, a lot of the rural area in particular. And, culturally speaking, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, it's all sort of the same cultural feel. And so the pick is going to help her win those states. Now, the problem is, of course, none of that is occurring. We mentioned some of the polling numbers earlier, and her lead in Minnesota, Walz's own state, after he was announced as the running mate, her lead got cut in half. So it did not help her. Michigan also is within the margin of error. She was up by a few points higher than she is now, and it's essentially a statistical tie. So this isn't playing out the way that they claim they anticipated. Now, I think most reasonable people, again, we know that it was to placate the anti-Semitic wing, the neo-Nazi wing of the Democrat Party, but they can't exactly say that. They can't say, well, we didn't choose Shapiro because he was a Jew, and our party has problems with Jews. So instead, they try and rationalize that it's going to be that upper Midwestern vote that spans across states that are valuable. It isn't working, though. What doesn't help is when you have working on your behalf, campaigning on your behalf, the Democrat governor of Wisconsin mistakenly refer to the vice presidential nominee not as Tim Walz, but Tom Walz, not once, but twice. 2 times. While speaking at the Labor Fest in Milwaukee yesterday, Evers highlighted how Walz, like Evers, was a former union member and how he had signed the most pro-worker package in Minnesota's history. Like me, he's a former union member. He signed the most pro-worker package in Minnesota history to strengthen workforce protections, give people paid leave, and more, he said. In Wisconsin, you all know what happens when you elect a former teacher, don't you? We get stuff done. We always do what's best for kids and working families. We work to find common ground and consensus, and we work and lead with kindness, respect, passion. Those are the exact Midwestern values, folksy. Qualities and work ethic that will make Tom a great vice president. Many people, of course, took to social media to poke fun at Evers, mistakenly calling Walz by the wrong name, questioning if Walz is lying about his name as well, given that he lies about everything else under the sun. But, it's obviously not the biggest thing in the world, but when part of your pitch is that this guy is just as Wisconsin as he is Minnesota. He's just as much Michigan as Minnesota. And the governor of Wisconsin doesn't even get his name right while campaigning for him. Kind of sends the message that they're mailing it in just a little bit here, that maybe they're not quite as sold on the guy and passionate about him as they would like for everyone to believe. But maybe that's a folksy thing, getting a person's name wrong. We learned that having poor grammar is what makes you lie about your military service. That's what he provided as an explanation on CNN last week, that his poor grammar is the reason that he falsely claimed that he was in war when he never was. So maybe calling somebody by the wrong name is just a folksy thing that so many of us aren't genuinely and authentically folksy enough to understand. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we will see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 80. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 84. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 85.
There is a photo that's circulating, getting a lot of attention online, that falsely suggests, implies, claims through visuals that Kamala Harris is the official candidate of Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I saw this pop up, and it was it was very professional looking. I mean, clearly this was developed by somebody in order to falsely make people believe that the Philadelphia Eagles are endorsing Kamala Harris as a team. And the visual is at a bus stop, and it's a drawing of her wearing the Eagles helmet, and it says Kamala, and then there's a link that obviously it's an actual physical poster that somehow has been put up in at least in one of the a bus stop, and you've got the little glassed-in area to keep one out of the weather if it happens to be inclement weather, and it looks as if it's professionally put there. The Philadelphia Eagles are like, no, that's not us. The link goes to the official Philadelphia Eagles voting website, which, why do they have that? It encourages voter registration, as it does not mention any political candidate nor an official candidate of the franchise. The site instead offers resources for voters in Pennsylvania, including voting information, education resources, and ways to get involved. I mean, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world, but really? The Eagles Nation wrote on X, a photo of a billboard found in Philly of the hashtag Eagles appearing to endorse Kamala Harris is making the rounds on social media. The team has not made any sort of official announcement, and their voting resource website listed on it hasn't been updated since the primary election. While there's no known example of an NFL team endorsing a political candidate ahead of an election, in 2020, the league began the NFL Votes Initiative, which is nonpartisan and encourages voting and civic engagement through the NFL and communities. Newsweek reached out to Harris's campaign via email for comment. Meanwhile, this comes as Pennsylvania remains key battleground state and so forth. Now, this should come as no surprise, and it will be interesting to see if they really get down to whomever developed this, who put it together, who came up with the idea, who was able to place it up there as well. Now, it appears in the photo, and some of this is speculation, but generally speaking, you're going to have that sort of advertising space, if it is advertising space, sort of a lock and key situation so people can't tear it down. Is that what's going on here, or was it something that was just taped up? There's just a lot of potential implications here. But it would be interesting to see how close this actually gets to the Harris campaign, because as we've noted before, there's a study that was done that said a majority of Gen Zers will vote however their favorite celebrity tells them to vote. Like 52% said if Beyonce told them to vote a certain way, they would do it. 46% of people in that demographic said if Taylor Swift told them to vote a certain way, they would. So you have a majority of that demographic that fully acknowledges that their vote is up for grabs, or whomever wants, as long as their celebrity says this is how you should vote, then that is how they're going to vote. And then to see in Philadelphia this false and misleading presentation that the Philadelphia Eagles are supporting Kamala Harris. And if this were the other way around, I'm sure that the media would be openly talking about what sort of lawsuit could be filed against the Trump campaign for this sort of fraud. Have on legal experts, talk about the implications of this, aside from the total dishonesty, and once again, Trump world lying to the rest of the world and the rest of the American citizenry. But what sort of legal implications could be at play here? How much trouble could Donald Trump be in if this has any connection to his campaign? And of course, it would be somebody that is a supporter of Donald Trump in that scenario, which that would be enough for them to draw that connection and then to openly speculate about the sort of legal troubles he may be getting himself into, as if he doesn't have enough already. And this just once again shows the level of disrespect that he has for the American voter. I suspect that the level of curiosity that the media will have to get to the bottom of this and to determine what sort of legal implications there could be for something like this, I suspect that would be much, much, much more subdued than if it were the other way around, with Donald Trump's, campaign being presented as something that's endorsed by a particular football team. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Friday. KSGF.com. Local for less. Springfield Little Theater's Wizard of Oz for only $25. You can get a $50 certificate to Springfield Little Theater's Wizard of Oz. The performance September 13th through the 29th. So a couple of solid weeks there. Of course, if you don't win tickets, you can still purchase them and experience the wonder that is the Wizard of Oz. There is a, it's typical, but a somewhat humorous display of the hypocrisy of the Democrat Party. And News Nation has a story. RFK Jr.'s name on ballot poses danger for Trump in key states. Now, in a nutshell, here's what's going on. As you know, Democrats have been trying to get RFK Jr. kicked off of ballots. They tried to kick Trump off the ballot. Supreme Court stepped in unanimously and said, yeah, you can't do that. They have been successful in some states in their efforts to get Cornel West, the black man, off the ballot. They have been working to get Jill Stein kicked off of certain ballots, primarily Wisconsin, which many people attribute her presence on that ballot for Hillary Clinton's loss. And so this dismissiveness of some of these third-party left-wing extremists by the Democrat Party is something that they're just a little less dismissive of this time around. But the kicking of candidates off the ballot, and this is a tradition that, again, Obama really brought to the Democrats. It's how he managed his political career prior to anyone on a national level knowing who he was, and it's something that is now practiced by the Democrat Party. Things have shifted from RFK Jr. being on the ballot, being helpful for Trump, to where now it is seen as potentially damaging for Trump. So guess what Democrats are doing now? In their capacities, they are forcing RFK Jr. to stay on those ballots that he wants off of because, of course, they think that it may hurt Trump. Wisconsin happens to be one of those states. Prior to the Democrats overthrowing Biden's election, the polling when RFK Jr. was thrown into the mix was generally beneficial for Donald Trump, which, of course, is why they desperately wanted him off the ballot. But now things have changed. A lot of the people that didn't like the idea of Joe Biden, but they don't like Trump, were leaning towards or saying, yeah, I'd vote for RFK Jr. But once Biden was out of the picture, then Harris gained some of those voters, but the people who weren't going to vote for Trump weren't going to change their mind necessarily. Now, there's still hope, of course, this campaigning around the country by RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard may potentially move that needle a little bit. But the point being is now they see, at least in some states, like North Carolina or Wisconsin or Michigan, that RFK Jr. being off the ballot might help Donald Trump. So now they're doing everything they can to keep him on the ballot. News Nation has the story, and there's a couple of prongs to the story. One, they're talking about Kennedy, some of his campaign people, because he still wants to be on the ballot in some states. He's being very strategic about this, and there's nothing in violation of the law that says he can't do that. Because all 50 states have their own way of carrying out the elections, it's not like this one national election where it's a national vote and it's determined by the federal government. Each state has their own rules and regulations set up, and so in some states he's saying, I want off the ballots, but in others he is planning on being there to, quote, counterattack the Democratic Party and force them to spend money on states that they weren't counting in states like New York, California, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, and Washington. So what you've got a source saying here that, you know, what it is that the Democrats have tried to do to him and tried to do to Trump by draining their campaign cash, by holding them up in court all the time, that essentially the Kennedy campaign is going to do that, but they're just going to be out there campaigning, and that their hope is that Democrats will have to try and counter that, and then they're going to be utilizing some of their resources. On the other hand, Kennedy will remain on the ballot in some swing states and could take away votes from Trump. Prior to offering his endorsements, or his endorsement, sources close to Kennedy were aware that he could face complicated ballot challenges in some states and relayed that to Trump's camp during negotiations. The environmental attorney's goal of getting on as many ballots across the country as he could varied widely by each state, and reversing his work now has its own set of challenges. In the Midwest, for example, where Trump and Harris are running competitive ground games, Kennedy's candidacy could complicate the dynamics of a two-way race. Wisconsin and Michigan have clear statutes that prevent nominees from withdrawing. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's office has said state law prevents more marginal candidates from withdrawing from consideration. Kennedy's is expected to appear as the nominee for the Natural Law Party there in Wisconsin. The state's election commission overwhelmingly voted Tuesday that Kennedy could not be taken off the ballot because he's still alive, citing that as the only exception for removal being death. The North Carolina Board of Election, meanwhile, reportedly voted this week to deny Kennedy's removal request due to the fact that absentee ballots have already been sent out. Now, isn't that amazing? What an about-face. Wisconsin, for example. The way that it's being reported, the law is on the side of those who want to continue to have RFK Jr.'s name on the ballot. There's a deadline there, and it's pretty straightforward. Unless the candidate dies, the candidate stays on there. But these are the same people who have been dragging Trump to some degree, but RFK Jr. through the courts because they will challenge oftentimes what the law says, or they will just flat out challenge it anyhow because their priority is a couple-fold. One, it's to drain RFK Jr. of his resources at the time, but also if they could find a friendly judge to determine that the law doesn't need to be upheld in this particular example. We saw this after a number of different states allowed votes to be counted that shouldn't have been counted due to missing postmarks or missing signatures, and they would find friendly judges that would say, well, it's disenfranchising voters to stick to what the law is. And so the point here is, for a political party that has taken on the law and been more than willing to take someone like RFK Jr. to court, or Cornel West to court, or Jill Stein to court, even if they're on the losing end of it, it's amazing that suddenly they find themselves desiring to adhere to the letter of the law, if, of course, it means potentially harming Donald Trump's campaign. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll have mostly cloudy skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 57. For your Wednesday, sunny with a high near 84. And on Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 85.
All right, I want to share a piece from the Federalist. If you think Trump is the abortion extremist, you've bought Democrat propaganda. There's a couple of different reasons. One, I had anticipated talking about Donald Trump and comments that he made regarding an upcoming vote in Florida regarding an abortion situation there that isn't unlike what we are dealing with here in Missouri, and that is massive disinformation. It is trying to Trojan horse in abortion up until birth, masquerading it as a reasonable limitation, viability. The left, they're pretty good at manipulating, and they're pretty smart. And what really was benefiting the Republicans was this viability and the heartbeat situation. Because while the left may have tried to claim, well, a heartbeat doesn't prove that it's, a life situation, that defied what most of us understand, even on a very basic level. You check for a pulse to see if someone is alive. I mean, this is literally how these determinations are made, even oftentimes by medical professionals. Heart stopped at this particular time. That means the person is dead. And for the first time, when it came to the issue of abortion, pro-life individuals had something on their side that was grounded in truth and proper education of the population at large. And it was effective because people understand that. People understand viability, and they understand heartbeat. So what the left is doing is they are capitalizing off of that, recognizing that a majority of Americans who support abortion support it with limitations. So they are marketing it as such, but in reality, what it's actually doing is allowing abortion up until birth. And the way that they do this is by saying the health and life of the mother, Missouri specifically, even emotional health, and the person that's being paid to do the abortion is, on the Missouri amendment, if passed, will allow the person who is making money off the abortion to be the one to decide whether or not the mother emotionally needs it all the way up until 9 months pregnancy. It is as extreme and barbaric as you can possibly get. But, like most issues, the Democrats cannot be honest about where Trump is. They cannot be honest about what is on these ballots in a number of different states. And they have to lie about what is versus isn't going to happen if they get their way or if Trump gets his way when it comes to the issue of abortion. I mean, they're still running around being allowed to falsely claim that Donald Trump is going to pass some sort of federal ban on abortion, despite the fact that he's always been against that. He's never said that he's for it. And if there's one thing that Democrats love to say is that listen to what Trump says. Trump tells us what he's going to do, unless we're, of course, dealing with the issue of a federal ban on abortion, in which Trump has always been very clear that he does not support something like that. You're not supposed to pay attention to him that time. You are supposed to believe their lies that he's going to ban abortion on a federal level for everyone, no matter what. The piece in the Federalist starts out noting Florida's Amendment 4 ballot initiative is not about overturning the state's 6-week abortion ban. It is about inscribing an unlimited, unregulated access to abortion on demand for the entire 9 months of pregnancy into the Florida state constitution. Trump knows this, which is why he's voting no on Amendment 4. Yet the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign and abortion apologists continue to deceive Americans, both about Trump's position and the consequences of abortion initiatives. Now pro-lifers have a unique opportunity to use the focus on Trump to counter their lies. Trump's recent pronouncement on abortion policy have left many pro-lifers distraught. But rather than denounce Trump and hand the Oval Office over to Kamala Harris, the most extreme pro-abortion candidate ever, the pro-life movement should use the media attention Trump has brought to the issue to expose the falsehoods abortion apologists and the press continue to sell the American public. Pro-life politicians and activists should begin with the fraud the left and the propaganda press are peddling over Florida's Amendment 4 ballot initiative. Branded a right to abortion initiative, the ballot initiative, if passed, would create a state constitutional right to abortion through birth. Of course, that's not how the abortion apologists portray Amendment 4, as demonstrated by both the Harris campaign and the legacy press's response to Trump's recent announcement that he would vote against the initiative. On Friday, before taking the stage at a Pennsylvania rally, Fox News' Brian Lenis asked Trump whether he would be voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida. Trump answered, quote, "So I think 6 weeks. You need more time than 6 weeks. I've agreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can have an abortion in the 9th month. And all of that stuff is unacceptable, so I'll be voting no for that reason." Notwithstanding that Trump reiterated his opposition to Florida's 6-week abortion ban, the Harris campaign posted on its X account, quote, "Trump says he will vote to uphold Florida's 6-week abortion ban." Harris then used her personal account to amplify the lie, sharing the Kamala HQ post and adding, "Now he's voting for an abortion ban in the state where he lives." Soon after, the Harris-Walz campaign dispatched a statement from Kamala repeating the fabrication. "Donald Trump just made his position on abortion very clear. He will vote to uphold an abortion ban so extreme it applies before many women even know they're pregnant." Given that Trump was on video, the very video shared by the Harris campaign, expressly opposing Florida's 6-week abortion ban, one would think that the public would see through the vice president's lies. But this ignores the reality that the press overwhelmingly supports not merely the Harris-Walz campaign, but also Democrats' extreme position on abortion on demand. Thus, on Sunday, we saw NBC's Kristen Welker repeat the false narrative about Trump's position on Florida's 6-week abortion ban on Meet the Press. After noting that abortion is front and center this week, Welker began her questioning of Republican Senator Tom Cotton about abortion by representing that Trump, quote, "now says he's going to vote to keep Florida's 6-week abortion plan in place, a law he once described as terrible," end quote. Unfortunately, after having previously corrected the many falsehoods Welker told about the Biden-Harris administration withholding arms shipments to Israel, the Arkansas senator skipped over the Meet the Press host's fraudulent framing of Trump's comments. In other words, it's just sometimes a little too daunting to keep up with all the lies coming out of NBC. Yet, given that, as Welker noted, abortion is front and center, every pro-life advocate should use the focus on Trump's comments about the 6-week abortion ban to wake up Americans to what the various state constitutional initiatives do, which is install a regime of abortion on demand throughout the entire 9 months of pregnancy. The video of Trump stating his opposition to Amendment 4 made that point, but as Harris and the propaganda press quickly showed, they will nonetheless continue to deceive Americans here by pretending Amendment 4 is a ballot initiative about Florida's 6-week abortion ban when it is not. To the contrary, the ballot initiative would add Amendment 4 entitled Limiting Government Interference with Abortion to the Florida Constitution. That provision states that other than parental notification laws, no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's health care provider. If Amendment 4 passes, Florida's Constitution would prohibit the state legislature from passing any laws that delay or restrict abortion before 22 weeks of pregnancy, including informed consent laws or waiting periods. Further, even after the baby can survive on her own outside the womb, the Florida Constitution would prohibit any ban on abortion. Pro-lifers need to make this point, but only after first explaining the nonsense of the idea that a post-viability abortion is ever even needed. Post-viability, the proper standard of care to treat a serious medical condition, is the prompt delivery of the baby, not the prolonged late-term abortion procedure. The only purpose of post-viability abortion is to ensure that you have a dead baby instead of delivering a live one. If adopted, Florida's ballot amendment will ensure precisely that even for a full-term baby. That's because Amendment 4 prohibits the state legislature from delaying or restricting abortions where the woman's health care provider concludes the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's, quote, health. Voters should recognize that the amendment speaks of a patient's health care provider, not a licensed doctor, leaving the determination to a wide variety of individuals in the healthcare field. More significant is the initiative's use of the word health, which reaches an unlimited array of justification for an abortion that most Americans would not consider health-related. For instance, the World Health Organization advises that countries permitting abortion on health grounds should interpret health to mean a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Thus, even economic strain or the desire to keep a partner happy provide a supposedly health-related justification for a post-viability abortion. Further, even if a court might limit the meaning of health to physical and mental health, abortion until the moment of birth would remain constitutionally protected by Amendment 4. That's because the abortionist decided whether the mother needs an abortion to protect her mental health can always rely on the American Medical Association's position that women suffer worse mental health outcomes from being denied an abortion than from obtaining an abortion. Trump is absolutely right then when he stated that Amendment 4 is radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. Yet that is precisely what the Harris-Walz ticket supports. Also, unlike Trump, who has also denounced Florida's 6-week abortion ban, Vice President Harris has never professed that it is ever too late for an abortion. Here, for all of Harris's efforts to paint Trump as the abortion extremist, it is the vice president, Democrats, and their supporters in the press who advocate the extreme position of legal abortion until birth. In fact, the overwhelming majority of countries ban abortion on demand in the 2nd trimester, with the United States only one of only 15 countries in the UN that permits abortion on demand past 15 weeks of gestation. Polls also show that 65% of Americans believe that abortion should be banned after 20 weeks or before. Trump's view that the 6-week ban is too early likewise coincides with public opinion, with only 36% of surveyed Americans supporting a ban at 6 weeks, while pro-life advocates understandably object to such early abortions as they, like all abortions, end an innocent human life. Trump is not the problem here. He's merely a mirror reflecting societal views shaped by a 50-plus year of abortion advocacy dehumanizing the unborn. Thus, rather than focus on the Republican candidates' imperfect views, pro-life politicians and advocates would better serve the interest of the unborn by co-opting the media attention spurred by Trump's comments on both the 6-week abortion ban and Amendment 4 to counter the lies of the Harris-Walz campaign that the propaganda press will continue to parrot until November. Now, again, I wanted to share this for a couple of reasons. One, because Missouri is facing the same thing. Unless court challenges prevent it from being on the ballot, there will be unlimited abortion guaranteed in the state of Missouri. And they will say, as they couch it, as viability, unless the person providing the abortion determines that the mother wants one, will be emotionally scarred without one. I equate it to the legalization of medical marijuana. Legalization of medical marijuana essentially legalized marijuana for anyone and everyone, because in those states you could always find somebody who would say, yes, you suffer from anxiety, so here's your prescription. It would be the same thing for abortion up until birth. Secondly, to the point being made here about where the extremist abortion views lie, despite having the media campaigning for them, it is the Kamala Harris campaign and other Democrats that hold the extreme view. Every time I talk about this issue, inevitably, I will get angry messages from people claiming that it is not true that Democrats do not support abortion up until birth. Every time I respond with, when do they support it being illegal? And there's never a response to that. By the way, that is an approach that you may find yourself, wanting to use when you have these discussions with people who don't want to believe or don't want other people to believe that Democrats support abortion up until birth. Just ask them that simple question. When do they support it being illegal? And I think oftentimes that is an awakening moment for even pro-abortion Democrats, because then that forces them to realize, gosh, I guess we don't know the answer to that, do we? And then the larger point that even when Trump is in line with where a majority of people fall on this issue, they still will pump out the lies and portray him as being the extremist. And when you have the media campaigning for you, it's a much, much easier thing to do. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Report. Kamala Harris to prioritize attacks on Trump rather than substance during the debate. Well, this tracks. NBC News reporting last week on Harris's approach to debating Donald Trump. A source told NBC News that while Harris's team is preparing to talk about a variety of topics, the campaign very much views the optics of the debate as critically important. To that end, the source said Harris and her team are focusing on homing in on how to needle Trump to rattle him. Wasn't this the same approach that the Biden campaign was taking? That it was, going to throw him off his game. It was just going to needle at him to where I guess Trump was supposed to explode and pick Biden up over his head and throw him down off stage. NBC notes that in that sense, the source said, it's going to be less about substance and more about showcasing Harris as a woman who isn't scared and isn't going to cower and who is standing up to Trump and holding him accountable. For what? Unprecedented economic success? Hold him accountable for the border wall, which you were against, but now you say you're for? Hold him accountable for pursuing the expansion of fracking, which you were opposed to, but now you're for? You're going to hold him accountable for consistently being against government mandating the manufacturing and purchasing of EV vehicles as opposed to traditional gas vehicles, something that the Kamala Harris campaign was against before she was for, or vice versa. I mean, wait, where are we going to start here? Holding him accountable for what? Because most of the and you can see why it is that her campaign is declaring that she's not really going to be talking about the issues, because where is she on them? The fact that she has her surrogates out there claiming that Kamala is supportive of the main issues facing our country today in a manner that Trump also is, tells all of us that she knows, her campaign knows, that Trump's positions resonate with the American people, so they have to lie about where it is that Kamala stands on these issues. And I suspect she's going to do, this is already prepping the media to recognize that she's going to do everything she possibly can to not take a position on the issues. This is just laying the groundwork for it. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Hey, don't forget, Wilder RV, not only do they have your next RV, but they offer the full spectrum of repairs, HVAC, electrical, water damage, slide-outs, appliances, free on-site sewer dump, offer propane bottle fill, and so much more, accessories. And it's all in Clinton, Missouri, just north of Springfield. You can find them at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson talking to CBS this morning on electing a black woman as president, which is an amazing feat given that the woman could not identify by definition what a woman is. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.